Hello, welcome back. Today on International Dispute Management, we want to talk about community development. That's something that's dear to my heart. I've worked on it for a long time and with several communities. I usually start with the definition. In this case, I'm going to do the same, but I want to let you know that I plan to do more videos on community development because it's such a broad area and there's so many different things that we can do. And, whether it's an urban or rural community, it is the voice of the people. And I want to emphasize that when we do community development, it is the purest form of democracy. So what all community development projects have in common is that they are, again, the voice of the people. So I will talk a little bit more about the basics and then talk more about, in this particular video, environmental regulations and how they are connected to community development, which is very important. So to roughly define it, community development is a practice that promotes democracy, sustainable development, civil rights, equity, economic opportunities, as well as social and environmental justice, farming, beehives, all kinds of things. I mean, these are the things that community development can do, whether it's crime watch or whatever. There is a lot of different subjects that this topic can cover. So how does we do this, you ask? Well, we empower the community to organize, and that organization educates their local population on issues that have social and economic impacts on their lives, like Crime Watch or something like that. I mean, something that's going to have an immediate impact, but it can also be for long-term projects. What type of communities, you ask? It doesn't really matter. Communities, local, state, tribal, urban, rural, big, small, anywhere people come together and take collective actions that generate solutions to common problems. And they could be uncommon problems too. I mean, you could have something very unique. Okay, so, what type of problems you talk about? Well, generally, it's anywhere a committee there's a commitment to rights, solidarity, democracy, equality, environmental, social justice, again, urban farming, environmental issues, local development, jobs, crimes, whatever. Pretty much you name the issue, and if it can be solved at the community level, and the people in the community are willing to help, and people in neighboring communities are also willing to help, because what you do in one community impacts them as well. In essence, community development provides a voice for the people and an opportunity to be part of the solution. So going through some of these community development projects can get quite heated because there's a lot of passion amongst the community on certain issues. So I'm going to talk mainly on environmental justice and how it's connected with environmental regulations on this video. Community revitalization helps to improve public health and strengthens their economies while providing sustainable environmental conditions. And if you look at EPA's motto, it's human health and the environment. And so what happens in one area affects everybody. We have a lot of heat islands. We have a lot of cancer islands. And that's generally because of what's in that community. So we encourage renewable energy development on current and formerly contaminated lands, landfills, mine sites, nuclear sites, whatever was abandoned. And that is really part of RCRA, or as they call it, LCARD, or land development. RCRA does a lot in their brownfields program. They do a lot of cleanup, and that can help the communities. So smart growth is another area. It covers a range of developments on conservation strategies and helps protect our health and our natural environment. And it makes our communities more attractive environmentally stronger and more socially diverse. And that is something that is very important. Sustainable Communities was one of the 6 national research projects, and we had a lot of them before the current administration canceled them because they didn't like DEI. These programs provide technical solutions, tools, and there's all kinds of different computer tools and resource tools that you can use to solve your problems. And once we solve them in one community, we can spread throughout the country and solve them in all kinds of communities. So they provide resources that are critical to protect the environment and safeguard public health. How are these community developments, and how is alternative resolution, or ADR, connected? And the simple answer to that is community development and alternative resolution tools, ADR, are interconnected in that they aim to resolve the conflict and improve the relationship with the people, not only with that community, other communities, with state and local governments as well. And generally, state and local governments have a big stake in these community developments. Anytime we have a dispute, I always say the same thing, but in a community dispute, any dispute provides an opportunity for a solution. And in this case, community disputes provide an opportunity for a sustainable solution using ADR as an avenue for the people's voices to be heard, promoting equity and accessibility in the decision-making process, and while minimalizing reliance on the traditional legal system. Once it goes to a legal system, it can take years, decades to get resolved. And very seldom all the parties involved are happy with the solution, but it is a legal decision and it stands. It's really important that the effective community has input in the decision process, and it promotes good, healthy government because they are part of the government. Using ADR techniques such as mediation, arbitration, which are designed to promote constructive interaction between parties, leads to a more sustainable outcome compared to an adversarial legal process, mainly because all parties have their voices heard, creating social cohesion and cooperation. ADR techniques, when used in community settings, help to remove minor conflicts, which can overshadow the main issue, or what I call the root cause, and take up valuable time and resources. So you're arguing about all these little things and you're ignoring the big problem. And we commonly say that is just putting a Band-Aid on a broken arm. That doesn't really work well. So are there environmental regulations that promote community development? In a word, yes. And I'll start with some of the more obvious ones. Environmental justice regulations focus on ensuring fair treatment and meaningful involvement for all people in environmental decisions, particularly addressing disparities in environmental impacts across different communities. The Clinton administration, through Executive Order 12898, established what we currently refer to as environmental justice. Before that, it was known as environmental racism. So the Clinton administration renamed it, but they also empowered it and funded it. So EO 12898 was later upgraded to 14008, and every administration since the Clinton administration, regardless of party affiliation, continue these executive orders, except for the current administration. These executive orders were designed to protect vulnerable populations from disproportionate environmental and health-related hazards by promoting equitable access to the decision-making process. This is your voice. You get to say how things are done. It takes more time, and we'll get to that too with some of the current proposed legislation. Okay, Congress provided access to the process with most environmental regulations through the public notice requirement. The Clean Water Act, the Clean Air Act, RCRA, and CERCLA Superfund all have public notice requirements. The public notice requirements allows the public to have a voice in the federal government project, and many states have their own, which are actually more strict. I mean, generally you're going to get 45 days with the federal government. Some of them they have more, some of them they have less. That just depends on the state. You should consult your state's regulatory agencies for their regulations so you know where you're at. So the Environmental Policy Act, or NEPA, which is in Section 309 of the Clean Air Act, was created because it emerged that the environmental crisis of the late 1960s, where the Cuyahoga River caught on fire. If you weren't born in the 1960s, it's hard to believe that rivers actually caught on fire and that cities were being choked by smog and acid rain. And those have direct impacts on your health, especially respiratory. So yes, due to the air pollution, the rain had somewhere an acidic pH around about 2, which normal rain is around about 5.2. That is just normal rain. So pH 7 is neutral. So rain on average is slightly acidic. Congress recognized the profound impacts of these activities on interrelational all the components of natural environment, pointing to the pressure from population growth, high density, urbanization, industrialization, resource exploitation, new and expanding technologies, advances. So really not a whole lot has changed. The only thing that's changed is that they're trying to roll back a lot of regulations that actually protect you. President Richard Nixon needed a distraction from Watergate and some of the other things that he did in the Vietnam War. So he signed NEPA into law on January the 1st, 1970, making it one of the first environmental statutes. The law has since become a model. A lot of people call it the Magna Carta of environmental law. NEPA may sound like a bureaucratic jargon, and actually, since I worked in the EPA for 21 years, it is, but it's 56 years old and gives ordinary Americans extraordinary power over federal projects. And that is, if they're building a landfill in your backyard, you really want to have a say in it, So really the types of projects, they range greatly. Any federal project is subject to, but I'll get into the triggers that actually trigger NEPA. Anything from highway construction to national park management, NEPA requires federal agencies to examine environmental impacts and listen to the public input before making a major decision. And this has been argued in the courts for years. There's just all kinds of case studies on this. So the law doesn't ban or issue permits on specific project. NEPA does not issue permits, okay? Most of those permits are delegated to state agencies, environmental agencies that actually issue the permits. So NEPA requires that we do a public document so everyone can read it and anyone can challenge it. NEPA requires federal agencies to access and publicly disclose environmental impacts before major actions like building highways, funding infrastructure, energy project. And so NEPA itself is a planning document. It is procedural. It does not issue permits, but it does review permits, and that's a big difference in issuing them and reviewing them. So not everybody has to do NEPA. It's mainly targeted at federal agencies, and there's 4 triggers: federal land, federal permit, federal funding, and high level of controversy. Really, the first three are the ones that are focused on. When NEPA was in its infancy, there was quite a few projects that had high level of controversy, but the problem is who's going to pay for it. And I'll admit these are very expensive. They cost them millions of dollars to do, but it's better to make the decisions up front than to try to correct them once you've already damaged the environment. So I'm going to tell you over and over again that NEPA does not issue permits, but it does review them and makes recommendations. And the reason I say that is because you listen to a lot of politicians, and they're going to talk about, oh, we have to streamline NEPA permitting. But NEPA's not issuing the permits, so it's all just rhetoric. So NEPA permitting what you should understand is that this is political rhetoric when we're talking about NEPA permitting. Most environmental permits are issued through state delegations with federal oversight, because most of our environmental laws are delegated to the state. There is an exception, or there actually is a couple of exceptions, but the only one I'll really address is 404 of the Clean Water Act. And the reason that's an exception is because the states didn't take it. Only a couple states took the delegated program for wetlands and streams. And that can be a trigger to, because it is a federal permit, do a more in-depth NEPA analysis. I can provide more in-depth analysis about these issues, and I do, in my new book, where I talk about circularity and resource-based dispute management. I also have, my first book was resource-based dispute management, which I discuss in another video, and I will go on, once the circularity book is published, I'll have a separate video on that, but it's talking about recycling and how to do it and how to use it in disputes. So, everything I talk about in all my videos is about power. So the power structure of how things happen. And this one will be no different, and I'll get to it in a minute. So how do federal projects impact communities? NEPA shapes how federal projects impact communities by requiring agencies to study and disclose the environmental effects. So that's very important, because if you're going to put a landfill in and you're worried about it off-gassing, that's going to affect your health if you're close, within a couple miles of it, actually. This provides power to the public. Your voice is power. You have, by voicing your concerns to your political constituents or your political Senate and congressmen, then you're going to get their attention. So what's the SPEED Act? And this is where I was going to talk about with the power structure. Well, House Bill H.R. 4776 is a legislation measure by the current administration aimed at U.S. permitting law, which is in the essence gutting NEPA, and seeks to streamline NEPA through using AI, in which we already know AI is not dependable and it lies. So the bill also states that the applicant does not have to select the NEPA, which is the least environmentally damaging practical alternative, which is what the recommendations that you're going to get from NEPA are. This bill has been passed by the House. It's yet to be voted on in the Senate as of the date of this video. I ask you to contact your senator and request that they vote no on the SPEED Act. Limiting review time does not allow for complete analysis and will result in future impacts of federal projects. So, sorry. How does NEPA create governmental transparency? Well, before NEPA, federal agencies made decisions internally focusing on their specific mission, like building highways or dams. Environmental and social costs were often treated as secondary concerns. NEPA requires a detailed statement on environmental impacts created by radical new transparency, which the current administration is not very transparent. They say they are, but they're not, because you don't know about what's going on. So this The shift in restructured government accountability makes environmental protections a continuing responsibility of the federal government and gives citizens information and legal standing to hold agencies accountable. So your voice is important. Um, so how does NEPA reviews work? NEPA operates as a tiered system that applies increasingly rigorous analysis based on project potential for environmental impacts. Federal agencies fall into three categories. So the types of reports that you're going to get is a categorical exclusion, which this administration prefers, does not give a full analysis. Environmental assessment, which does, but they generally have a FONSI and everything meets a FONSI, so it doesn't really help. And the environmental impact statement, which is the one that they're trying to get rid of. So public comment period. Once the document is published, you have a 45-day public comment period, and it begins right when it's published. Sometimes they'll extend it. In fact, I've gotten many agencies to extend it. Any interested party, if whether you live there or you don't live there, I've seen people from other states comment on environmental projects, especially nuclear, because they're either downwind or they're upwind or they're within the 200-mile radius of if something went wrong. So agencies that are issuing the NEPA document must consider and respond to all substantive comments. So there, again, that's how the power of your voice is going to actually make them do stuff. The power of alternative analysis is that NEPA's strengths lie not in just identifying impacts, but in forcing regulations, public comparisons of those impacts to other possibilities. The agency's proposal is treated as one opinion among several to be evaluated. So, if you create a community organization and you want to challenge the results of a NEPA document, you can do so. And that makes it's very powerful. This comparative framework elevates NEPA from simple disclosure to a powerful planning tool that can reveal innovative, less damaging solutions that might otherwise, and probably will, be overlooked if there wasn't NEPA. NEPA requires federal agencies to publicly disclose and environmental impacts before major actions. What could be more democratic than that? I mean, we're going to sit here and we're going to talk about this project and who's affected, who's impacted. That is democracy at its best. We're talking about major projects like highways, buildings, funding infrastructure, energy projects, leasing of federal land for oil drilling or fracking. These are all major projects that probably would require a NEPA, a permit for Clean Water Act, Clean Air, or RCRA, Cleanup, or Superfund. But NEPA itself is procedural. It ensures transparency and informed. I keep repeating that because I think it's very important. The point that I'm trying to make is that ADR and community development get together very well because ADR and the environmental regulations provide a foundation for better communications and allows the public voice to be heard in a democratic process. That's all I have today. A little long today, but look forward to other community development videos. So thank you for your time. And if you would like if you like the contents of this, please like and subscribe, and I'll see you next time. Thanks. Bye.